"You're late," my mom said as she stepped out onto the porch, dragging her suitcase behind her. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 6:02 a.m. "2 minutes late, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. I hopped out of the car and moved to help with her luggage, then froze. There she was, Amber, my sister. She stepped out of the house casually, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, sunglasses already perched on her head. She rolled a designer suitcase behind her, not a trace of hesitation on her face. My smile faltered. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Janice, my mom, turned to me with an unnaturally cheerful smile that made my stomach twist. "Oh, Elena, we decided Amber should come instead of you. She's been under so much stress lately, and we thought she really needs this trip." The air left my lungs like I'd been punched. "Instead of me?" I managed, my chest tightening. "Mom, I've been planning this for years. I paid for everything. The flights, the hotels, the tours." She waved her hand dismissively, as though I'd pointed out something trivial. "And we're so grateful, sweetheart. But you're always working so hard. You can take another trip later. Amber needs this right now." Amber didn't even try to look apologetic. She just smirked and shifted her weight onto one hip. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she said, her tone laced with fake sweetness. My father, Russell, stepped out moments later. He didn't look at me as he passed, just handed over his suitcase like it was any other morning. I stood still, my pulse pounding. "This is unbelievable," I said, my voice shaking. "This trip was supposed to be for all of us, something special." "Well, it still is," my mom said, practically beaming, "just with Amber instead." "Don't make this a big deal, Elena," she added. "Your sister really needs a break." My name is Elena Hartley, and for the last 2 years, I worked overtime, skipped vacations, and stashed every spare penny away to create a trip my parents would never forget. Paris, Rome, Vienna. Luxury hotels, guided tours, 5-star meals. I mapped it all out to the minute. And in a matter of seconds, they swapped me out like I was just an afterthought. I clenched my jaw, biting back the 1,000 things I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked to the trunk and popped it open. "Let's get going then," I said flatly. If they wanted to prioritize her over me, fine, let them go. But I wasn't about to let them enjoy it. The drive to the airport was thick with silence, except for Amber's constant stream of chatter. "Oh my God, Mom, did you see that TikTok about Paris? I can't wait to go shopping there. Do you think we'll have time for that? Or are we stuck with tours the whole time?" My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I stared straight ahead, willing myself not to speak. My mom chuckled softly. "Of course we'll have time, honey. We'll figure it out when we get there." When we get there, they didn't even realize I wasn't part of the we anymore. My dad finally spoke. "Thanks for driving us, Elena. I know this probably feels unusual." "Unusual?" I echoed. "That's one way to put it, Dad." He shifted in his seat, clearly regretting saying anything. Amber leaned forward between the seats, resting her chin on her arms. "You're not mad, right?" she said. "I mean, this is really big of you. I could never have afforded this on my own." I smiled tightly. "Of course, Amber. Enjoy the trip." By the time we reached the airport, my patience was hanging by a thread. I helped unload their luggage mechanically. My mom gave me a quick hug. "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. This means so much to us and to Amber." I nodded stiffly. "Sure, Mom." Amber beamed as she wheeled her suitcase away. "You're the best, Elena." I stood there watching them disappear into the terminal, my chest a knot of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. The drive back home was a blur. Every word replayed in my head like a cruel loop. "You're always working so hard. She really needs this. Thanks for understanding." I parked in my driveway and sat still for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Then, like someone had flipped a switch, I stormed into the house, threw open my laptop, and logged into every travel account I had. Hotel reservations, canceled. Guided tours, refunded. Airline upgrades, revoked. I watched the cancellation emails pile up in my inbox, each one feeling like a breath of air in my tightening lungs. They wanted to go without me? Fine. But they weren't going to enjoy 5-star luxury on my dime? When I closed my laptop, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Satisfaction. They could explain themselves to the front desk in Paris. I was done being their doormat. The first call came while I was unpacking my suitcase, the one I had packed so carefully for a trip that no longer belonged to me. The irony wasn't lost on me as I hung my dresses back up, refolded my scarves, and returned my walking shoes to their shelf. My phone buzzed again and again. I didn't pick it up. The text messages were relentless. Mom. Elena, what's going on? The hotel won't let us check in. The reservation is missing. Call me immediately. Mom. This isn't funny. Fix this now. I actually laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. Fix this. That had been my unofficial role in the family for years. The one who held everything together while everyone else made messes. But this time, I wasn't coming to the rescue. A new text popped up. This one from Amber. Amber. Violet. This is so petty. We're stuck here because of you. Call the hotel and fix it now. Wrong name. She was so worked up, she texted me by mistake under a different contact name. I deleted the message without replying. Instead of panicking, I made a cup of tea and sat on the couch, letting the steam warm my face while my phone buzzed in the background. I didn't even check who was calling anymore. It didn't matter. Eventually, I picked up, more out of curiosity than compassion. Elena, my mom snapped before I could say a word. What did you do? The hotel says the reservation was canceled and none of the tours are booked. What the hell is going on? I canceled them, I said flatly. There was a pause, a stunned, disbelieving silence. Why would you do that? She finally hissed. Oh, I don't know, I said, voice laced with ice. Maybe because you decided to take Amber on my trip without even telling me until we were at the driveway. You're lucky I even drove you to the airport. We thought you'd understand, she snapped. Understand what? That years of planning, saving, and sacrificing didn't matter? That all it takes is a pout from Amber for you to replace me? Elena, no. You don't get to call and demand I fix the mess you created. You made your choice. Now live with it. I hung up. Then I turned my phone off. For the first time in years, the silence felt like freedom. By the next morning, the barrage resumed. When I turned my phone back on, there were 13 missed calls, 4 voicemails, a slew of texts, each more desperate than the last. Mom, you've gone too far. Your sister is in tears. Your father is furious. None of the hotels will take us. Amber, you're acting like a child. I don't get why you're making this such a big deal. Just fix it already. Dad, we need to talk. This isn't right. I set the phone down. I wasn't surprised. They didn't know how to function without me making things easy for them. I poured another cup of tea and opened my laptop, not to rebook anything, but to check emails for work. I felt grounded, clear. Like the fog I'd lived in for years was finally lifting. The phone rang again. I let it buzz until it went to voicemail. Seconds later, a new message. This time, I listened. Elena, this isn't funny anymore. My mom fumed. We're stranded. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I took a slow sip of tea. Embarrassing? I murmured. Try being erased from your own vacation like you didn't even matter. Her voicemail continued, with Amber's voice yelling in the background. Mom, just hang up on her. She's being impossible. That was the final straw. I called her back. She answered immediately. Elena, thank God. Listen. I hope you enjoy the bonding time with Amber, I said. Tone even and controlled. Because this isn't my trip anymore. You made sure of that. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. Lauren needed this more than you. And now she can figure it out, I said. You made your decision. Don't expect me to fund her vacation, too. We're family, she said, voice rising. We don't do this to each other. I laughed bitterly. Funny. I was just thinking the same thing. I hung up again. And this time, I left my phone off for 2 full days. Those 2 days were the most peaceful I'd had in years. No calls, no guilt, no expectations. I sat on the back porch in the mornings with coffee and quiet. I caught up on things I loved, reading, writing, even baking a loaf of bread I'd been too busy to try. The time was mine, finally, and I intended to keep it that way. But by the 3rd evening, curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on. 17 voicemails. I listened to the last one, expecting more yelling, but instead... We're back at the airport now, my mom said, her voice quieter. The trip is ruined. I hope you're happy. Amber is devastated. Your father and I... Well, disappointed doesn't even begin to cover it. Call us when you're ready to talk. I deleted it. I wasn't ready to talk, and I didn't know if I ever would be. This wasn't just about a trip. It was about years of being sidelined, years of being the responsible one, the fixer, the background character to Amber's chaos. This trip was just the breaking point. But the cracks? They've been forming for a long, long time. The call came on a rainy Sunday afternoon. My phone lit up with my dad's name. For a second, I considered letting it ring out. But then I answered. Elena, he said, his voice heavy with fatigue. Your mom wanted me to call. She thinks you'll listen to me. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the gray clouds outside my window. Go ahead. He exhaled slowly. Look, this has all gotten out of hand. Your mom's upset. Amber's furious. It's just a mess, but you're better than this. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Better than what, Dad? Standing up for myself? That's not what I meant, he said quickly. You've always been the calm one. The one who keeps everything together. This just isn't like you. You're right, I said sharply. It's not like me. Because for once, I'm not playing the fixer. I'm not smoothing things over for you or for Mom or for Amber. He went quiet. I could picture him standing in the kitchen, rubbing the back of his neck like he always did when things got uncomfortable. Elena, he started again, you're punishing the whole family over one decision. Is that really fair? Fair? My voice rose before I could stop it. You want to talk about fair? I stood up and started pacing. Was it fair when you and Mom decided, without telling me, that I wasn't going on the trip I spent years planning? Was it fair to replace me with Amber like I didn't matter? That's not what we were trying to do, he said, defensive now. We just thought Amber needed it more. Of course you did, I snapped, because Amber always needs more. More attention, more support, more second chances. And I'm always the one expected to sacrifice so she can get what she wants. Another long silence. I don't know what you want me to say, he muttered. I don't want you to say anything, I replied coldly. I want you to understand that I'm done. I'm not going to keep being the afterthought. From now on, I come first. Come on, Elena. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up before he could say more. My hand trembled as I set the phone down. But beneath the tremble, there was something else. Relief. The next few days passed without a single call. No voicemails, no texts, just silence. And strangely, it felt like a gift. I didn't realize how much of my life had been swallowed up by obligation, by doing things for people who never asked how I felt about any of it, so I filled my time with what I wanted. I started sorting through boxes in my closet, old photo albums, forgotten travel brochures, lists of dream destinations I'd written but never acted on. It was like uncovering pieces of a version of me I hadn't seen in years. I donated clothes I didn't wear anymore. I cooked meals for one without rushing. I played music in the house again. I was relearning how to enjoy my own company. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. The calm didn't last, of course. One evening, as I was cleaning up from dinner, headlights swept across my window. A moment later, the doorbell rang. I didn't need to check to know who it was. My parents and Amber. I opened the door slowly, bracing myself. Janice, my mother, stood on the porch with a forced smile. "Elena, can we come in?" I stepped aside silently. They walked into the living room and sat down. Amber didn't meet my eyes. Russell looked anywhere but at me. Janice wasted no time. "We're back," she said tightly. "The trip was a disaster." "I'm aware. We had to stay in some budget motel outside the city. The food was awful. The tours we tried to book last minute were full. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to show up and be told there was no reservation?" "Sounds rough," I said, my voice calm. "But you wanted to take Amber. I'm sure you all had some great bonding time." Amber rolled her eyes. "Don't be like that." "Like what?" I asked, folding my arms. "Honest?" Janice leaned forward, voice rising. "You knew we couldn't afford the kind of trip you planned. You set us up to fail." I stood, placing my coffee mug on the table with a soft clink. "No, Mom. I planned a trip for the three of us. Something special. Something I saved for, sacrificed for, and you chose to cut me out at the last second." Russell finally spoke. "You didn't have to cancel everything. That was extreme." "Was it?" I asked. "Why should I fund a trip I wasn't even invited to?" Amber crossed her arms. "You're so dramatic. It's just money, Elena." "And you're so entitled," I snapped. "Do you have any idea what it took to make that trip happen? Or do you just assume everything magically appears for you?" Silence. I looked at each of them. I've spent my entire life being the responsible one, the fixer, the one who plans, organizes, keeps things moving, and you've all taken that for granted. Janice opened her mouth, but I raised a hand to stop her. You don't get to choose Amber and still expect the benefits of everything I worked for. That trip was mine. You took it away, so I took it back. I grabbed my keys and my bag. "I'm glad you're home safe, but don't expect things to go back to how they were." Amber huffed. "Elena." "No," I said firmly. "I'm done." I walked out without looking back. The air outside was cool, crisp, the kind that wakes you up from a long, stifling sleep. As I slid behind the wheel and started the car, I glanced at the house one last time. They'd never expected me to stand up for myself, but I had. And now it was my turn to live on my own terms. 3. The drive home from my parents' house was quiet. No angry music, no anxious thoughts buzzing around, just silence, and for the first time, that silence wasn't heavy. It was mine. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, hands still on the steering wheel. I replayed the conversation again, Mom's accusatory tone, Amber's whining, Dad's disappointment thinly veiled as concern. They had expected me to fold, to grovel, to apologize for daring to assert myself. Instead, they got a version of me they'd never seen before, one that wasn't afraid to walk away. Inside my home, I brewed a fresh pot of tea and curled up on the couch, letting the steam warm my face and the stillness wrap around me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. But underneath that, there was something new. clarity. For years, I'd chased their approval like a dog begging for scraps. I'd convinced myself that one day they'd see how hard I worked, how much I gave, and finally say, "Thank you, we see you." But that moment never came. It had taken a canceled trip and a front porch confrontation to realize what I should have known all along. They weren't waiting to appreciate me because they didn't think I needed to be appreciated. The next morning, I woke up feeling light. No frantic text messages, no drama, no guilt lingering over every move I made. I spent the day doing little things that brought me joy. I cleaned out the guest room and turned it into a small reading nook. I put on a face mask, took a long bath, and finally tried out a lemon tart recipe I'd bookmarked a year ago. It felt indulgent to prioritize myself, but it also felt right. That afternoon, Naomi showed up unannounced, 2 cups of coffee in hand and a mischievous smile on her face. "I heard," she said as I opened the door. "Of course you did," I sighed, stepping aside to let her in. "Let me guess. My mom called you?" "She did," Naomi said, dropping onto my couch. "Wanted me to talk some sense into you." "And?" she grinned. "I told her you were probably too busy being fabulous to care." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. "You're the best." Naomi's smile softened. "No, you're the best, because you finally stood up for yourself." I sipped the coffee and leaned back. It wasn't easy. "It never is," she said. "But you did it, and that matters." Her words echoed in my head long after she left, because she was right. For the first time, I had drawn a line in the sand, and I didn't step over it no matter how much pressure they put on me. By the weekend, I found myself thinking about the money I had saved for the trip. Thousands of dollars, gone from my bank account, and now back again. For a moment, I felt the old guilt creeping in. Should I have let them go anyway? Was I too harsh? But then I remembered Amber's smug face, Mom's dismissive tone, and Dad's refusal to take a side. No, they made their choice. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences. That night, I opened the travel spreadsheet I'd used to plan the trip. Every reservation I had canceled was still there, highlighted in red, one after another. Instead of feeling regret, I felt opportunity. I closed the spreadsheet and opened a new tab, Solo Travel Ideas. The idea hit me like a spark. Why not take the trip anyway? Just alone. I didn't need their company to enjoy the cities I'd dreamed about. I didn't need their approval to make memories that belonged only to me. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. The Eiffel Tower at night, pasta in Rome, a quiet gondola ride in Venice, and no one to roll their eyes or hijack the itinerary. I booked a solo trip to Italy, not out of spite, out of celebration. This time, it was about me. Landing in Rome weeks later, I stepped off the plane and inhaled deeply. The air was different here, heavier, older, magical. The taxi ride into the city felt like a dream. I stared out the window, watching centuries of architecture blur by. My first morning, I walked the cobbled streets at sunrise with no agenda, no timeline, no one to keep happy. It was liberating. I ate croissants on quiet patios, read novels in old libraries, and wandered through museums at my own pace. I didn't need anyone's validation. One afternoon, I sat on the Spanish steps with a pistachio gelato in hand and pulled out my journal, the same one I'd abandoned months ago. But this time, I didn't write about ways to fix relationships or win approval. I wrote about me, learn Italian, start a creative business, visit 5 more countries, take a photography class, fall in love, maybe with someone, maybe just with life. Each bullet point was a declaration, not of rebellion, but of self-worth. On my last night in Florence, I had dinner at a small family-owned restaurant overlooking the Arno River. The sunset bathed the city in golden hues as I sipped wine and listened to the hum of Italian around me. I felt still. For so long, I had equated love with sacrifice, believing that being needed was the same as being valued. But now I saw the truth. I didn't need to be the fixer to be worthy. I didn't need to be chosen to matter. I already mattered. As I watched the lights flicker across the water, I made a quiet promise to myself. I will never let anyone make me feel invisible again. When I returned home from Italy, I felt like a different person. Not because the cities were magical, though they absolutely were. Not because I had checked off bucket list items or posted perfect photos, but because for the first time in years, I had lived on my terms. No one else's schedule, no compromises, no begging for appreciation. And the moment I stepped back into my house, suitcase in one hand and passport still warm from my pocket, I realized just how much space I had reclaimed inside myself. The silence in my house wasn't lonely anymore. It was peace. The next morning, my phone buzzed. "Mom, hope you had a nice trip. Maybe we can all talk soon." I stared at the message for a long time. It was carefully worded, neutral, but not apologetic. I set the phone down without replying. I wasn't avoiding her. I was just not ready. And for once, I didn't feel guilty about that. Instead, I focused on unpacking and placing the few souvenirs I'd brought back. A small watercolor from Florence, a leather-bound journal from Rome, a hand-carved necklace from a street vendor in Venice. Tiny things, but each one proof that I had lived a little more freely, that I had tasted life on my own terms. A few days later, my mom finally called. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but answered. "Elena," she said, her voice softer than usual. "How was your trip?" "It was amazing," I said, keeping my tone even. "I'm glad," she said, then paused. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened. Maybe we handled things poorly." That word, maybe, hung in the air like smoke. "Poorly?" I repeated. "You replaced me on a trip I planned and paid for, without telling me until we were in the driveway. That's more than poorly." "I know," she said. "Your dad and we didn't realize how much it would hurt you." "And Amber?" I asked. "Does she realize it too, or is she still blaming me for ruining her vacation?" "She's upset," my mom admitted, "but I think she understands she could have handled it better." I let out a sigh, leaning against the counter. "Mom, this wasn't just about a trip. It was about every holiday, every family decision, every time you expected me to step aside so Amber could be front and center. I'm not doing it anymore." There was silence on the other end. Then, "We don't want to lose you." The words landed like a stone in my chest. I'd spent years desperate to hear anything close to that. But now, I knew that words weren't enough. "I'm glad to hear that," I said, "but it's going to take more than a phone call. I need to see real effort, not just guilt." "You will," she promised. "We'll give you the space you need." Over the next few months, I kept my boundaries firm. I replied to messages when I felt like it. I answered calls on my terms, not theirs. I didn't explain myself. I didn't apologize for prioritizing my peace. And I began building a life that was mine, not one shaped by their expectations. I signed up for a photography class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for. I joined a local hiking group and met new people who didn't see me as a designated planner or emotional support sibling. They just saw me, Elena. I even reconnected with old dreams I'd shelved long ago, like starting a small creative business designing custom travel journals. I didn't have everything figured out, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of starting small. One sunny morning, I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee, watching the world go by. My neighbors' kids were racing their scooters down the sidewalk. A bird landed on the porch railing and chirped loudly, as if it had something important to say. The breeze smelled like jasmine. And for once, I wasn't thinking about who needed me or what problem I had to solve next. I was thinking about my next adventure. Not for anyone else, for me. That weekend, Naomi came over again. She kicked off her shoes and plopped onto my couch like she always did. "So," she said, grinning, "how's it feel being a total badass?" I laughed. "Is that what I am now?" "Absolutely," she said, raising her coffee cup, to standing up, walking away, and flying to Italy alone like the fierce woman you are. We clinked mugs. "Seriously," she said, her tone softening, "I've never seen you this... you." "I feel lighter," I admitted, like I finally stopped carrying their expectations around in a backpack I didn't realize I was wearing. Naomi nodded. "You reclaimed your life." "I think I did." That night, I sat down with my journal, the same one I had written in on the Spanish Steps. I turned to a fresh page and wrote just one line. I am no longer the background character in my own life. The words felt final, true, but also like a beginning. Because this wasn't just a recovery, it was a rebirth. And I was finally living a life where I wasn't invisible. I was seen by others. And more importantly, by myself. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I got the message that caught me off guard. Dad: "Hey Elena, I'm free for coffee this weekend if you want to talk. Just us. No pressure." The words were simple, but the tone was different. Not defensive, not guilt-ridden, just open. I stared at the screen for a few minutes. A few months ago, that message might have sent me spiraling. But now I had space to decide what I wanted, not what they expected. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the park. I arrived early, ordered my drink, and picked a table by the window. When Dad walked in, I could tell he was nervous. He gave me a small nod and sat down across from me, his hands wrapped around a paper cup. "Elena," he began, "I've been thinking about everything, about the trip, about how we've treated you." I said nothing, just waited. "I didn't see it," he admitted after a beat. "All these years, I thought you were just strong, like you didn't need the same kind of attention Amber did." I let out a small breath. "You thought I didn't need to be considered because I was quiet about it." He nodded. "That's exactly it. And I realize now that was wrong." There was something raw in his voice, something I hadn't heard in years, humility. "I know we've leaned on you too much. Counted on you to pick up the pieces without asking what it cost you." "It cost me a lot," I said quietly. "I've spent most of my life trying to earn your approval. But I never got it, not in the way I need it." He didn't argue. He just looked down, nodding slowly. "I want to be better," he said. "Not just say the words. I want to show up for you, like you've always shown up for us, even when we didn't deserve it." I sat with that for a moment. I didn't cry. I didn't snap. I just accepted it. "Okay," I said, "but I'm not going back to how things were. I'm not going to fix everything anymore." "I don't expect you to," he replied. "Honestly, I think it's time we started fixing ourselves." Later that week, I got a handwritten card in the mail from my mom. "Dear Elena, I know a letter doesn't undo the pain I've caused, but I'm writing because I need you to know how deeply sorry I am. I didn't understand the way we made you feel. I dismissed your hard work, and I let Amber take center stage for too long. That wasn't fair. You deserve better. We want to earn our place back in your life, not demand it. Love, Mom." I read the note twice. Then I placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness, I was learning, didn't need to be immediate. It didn't need to look like reconciliation. It just needed to begin with truth. And this was a start. In the months that followed, I kept choosing me. I finished my photography class and started selling prints online, landscapes from Italy, candid street shots, quiet moments captured through my lens. It was slow, steady progress, but every sale felt like a small victory. I also kept exploring. I visited new cities on weekends, solo trips, day adventures. I learned how to find joy in being alone and strength in setting boundaries. Most of all, I learned to ask myself the question I used to ask everyone else. What do you need right now? Sometimes the answer was space. Sometimes it was connection. Sometimes it was a long bath and a good book, and I gave myself permission to need all of it. One evening, I sat on my porch as the sun dipped below the trees. Naomi texted me a photo from her vacation, her smiling with a cocktail on the beach. Naomi: I finally did it. Solo trip to Hawaii. You inspired me. I smiled, heart full. A few minutes later, another message arrived. Amber: Hey, I've been thinking about a lot. I owe you a real apology. If you're open to it, I'd like to talk. No excuses, just honesty. I stared at the screen, surprised. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't defensive. It was genuine. I didn't reply right away, because this time I didn't feel pressure to. I would respond when I was ready. A week later, I visited the park with my camera. The trees were in full bloom, the air crisp with spring's arrival. A little girl ran past chasing bubbles, her laughter echoing across the path. I lifted the camera and snapped the moment instinctively. Click. A blur of joy frozen in time. I looked down at the image and smiled. Not just at the picture, but at the life I was building, one frame at a time. A life that belonged entirely to me. And as I walked along the path, camera swinging at my side, I felt it fully. I wasn't the family fixer anymore. I wasn't the forgotten one. I was Elena Hartley. And I was finally free.